Good morning. Welcome to our press conference for the film One-to-One, John and Yoko. And before we start, I will introduce the guest of the screening, starting from right. The producer, that way. The producer, Peter Worsley. The producer, Alice Webb. And the director of the film, Kevin MacDonald. And just to break the ice, I'm gonna start with a very obvious question, and it's why you identified this relatively short period in John Lennon and Yoko Ono's life, and in this particular concert.
Well, I can start by saying something about that, which these guys can then fill in. It's I guess around the period where this concert happened, and in a way I see the film as explaining why the concert happened, and it didn't happen for the reasons you think it happened. And of course this concert has this incredible value because it's the only full-length concert that John gave after leaving the Beatles, so it has an amazing resonance. And so the secondary kind of limitation we put on ourselves was it's from when they arrive in New York in late 71 and they move into Greenwich Village into this apartment, which is a one-room apartment, and then they move out in early 73. And so it's kind of the time they're living in this place. That's the other kind of limitation. But it's also the period where there's the most footage of them. You know, both in the public record in the archives, but also in the Lennon family archives, which we were so lucky to have access to, and lots of unseen home video, etc., and the audio recordings. But I think what I don't really know, actually, which they can now tell me, is what was the first conversation that you had about the concert and the rights to that, and how did that work out, because I wasn't involved in that.
So we had both myself personally, Mercury Studios. Sorry. Apologies. Both me personally and Mercury Studios had a relationship already with the Lennon estate and the Lennon family. We'd produced 3 films with them before, nothing on this scale. And so I was talking with the head of production at the Lennon studio, and I knew that they had the rushes and the raw material for this concert, which had been released, I think, on VHS in 1986 with a horrible audio mix. And so we were talking together about their plans to re-release the concert film, which was an enormous editing job of itself. And out of that conversation came the idea of, I became very interested immediately in the story, the context around this concert. And so together we started to think about, rather than just making a concert film, making a documentary telling more of the context. And Mercury Studios, maybe you can talk a little bit about the relationship with Mercury Studios with the Lennon family.
Yeah, so we, as Peter said, Mercury Studios, who I produce for, we have an ongoing relationship with the Lennon family. We have a relationship with Universal Music, which is where the Beatles' music sits, and so does John Lennon's. So when you find something so timeless and extraordinary as the concert, the only full-length concert that John did outside of the Beatles, you can't just put that out. There's far too much to say about it, which was why this project kind of just picked up a momentum by itself. It almost unveiled itself in terms of, as Kevin has said, that time capsule of just that period. And like with all these films, you've got to find the right ingredients. We had this incredible jewel of a concert to start with. We had the real trust and confidence of the Lennon family, which again grew as we were creating the film. And perhaps the hardest thing is you have to find the auteur, the person that can really bring something new and can give you a lens to look at all of this incredible material, which is why we were so honoured and delighted that Kevin came on to produce this, because I hope you agree that what he has created with the team is something really quite different. And, you know, I'll stop waffling, but yeah, that's how it kind of came about.
I think we have a question there.
You know, sometimes when we know about people, we see them from afar, but we really don't get a chance to kind of, who is this person? And sadly, John's not around for you to do this, but spending so much time with the material, so much time watching this, what do you think you learned about the man that kind of was awakening, in a sense, either intellectually, musically, spiritually, that you got from doing this project?
Well, I think that the idea of the film, in one sense, is just to hang out with them. You know, we looked for all those bits of archive footage where there was like strange beginnings or strange ends, and they're just hanging out and sitting there, and the things that aren't seemingly important, but which make you feel like, oh, I'm with them. I'm actually with these people in this situation. And I think that in terms of specific things, there's the intimacy of the phone calls and the home movie footage, and I think that you understand them in a more emotional way because of that. But specifically for me, the thing that I discovered, and which became a kind of a deeper theme of the film, I guess, is Yoko's relationship with her daughter, Kyoko, and her disappearance, and how that's really the main reason they went to America, was to look for her. And so this relationship between John and his own childhood, Yoko and her missing daughter, and then, of course, the children of Willowbrook, you realize that there's something here being said about children, and of course the pain that can be caused by children, but also the joy of children. And you end with the birth of Sean, with that very beautiful home movie footage of them in the Dakota building just after Sean is born.
I think there's a question right here.
Thank you very much. I'm a Mexican journalist. Thank you very much for bringing us John, and to have the feeling we were close to him. We were really talking to him. We were I wanted, at what time of the movie, I wanted to do something like that, to touch him. Really, it was an incredible feeling of being close to him. But I have a question, because in the 70s, there was not technology like now. How was it possible for you to get all those phone conversations? Because those phone conversations, they were not recorded. We used to call and they were not recorded. And my second question is, which is a very, very interesting space for us, being close to him, but at the same time, the camera comes slowly in a bedroom, in a flat. Is that the flat from Yoko? Or from the family? It's from Yoko? Just tell me that. I won't be able to see it, but that was coming slowly there. You're part of the story. That was my feeling. So that was my question. How did you get those feelings? Thank you.
Well, first, shall I answer the second question first? So I think one of the, for me, having worked on the project, Kevin came up with this idea of recreating their Bank Street apartment. And so we created that apartment on a set, and we did, and which I think is, for me, one of the genius ideas of the film, which I would never have had. And so what we did was we then did an enormous research of finding all the photographs and film footage of their Bank Street apartment, and we reconstructed it down to the smallest possible detail, because we knew the film would be seen by Lennon obsessives who know everything. So we had to make sure that every last detail was right. For example, the amplifier on the wall behind them, we searched everywhere for it, and we found one example of the identical model in Poland. And Kevin had a driver that he knew in Poland who went to buy the amplifier, bring it back to us in London. We found the inventory of books that the Lennons had when they first moved into the Dakota building. So all of the books, even the ones you can't see in the film, were books they had in their collection. All of the records that are in the box are records that were in their collection. We found that they still, so the quilt that you can see in the film still exists, but is too fragile to use on the set. So we wove a new quilt identical to the one that is in the film. And the little detail which I love is that the Peanuts pillowcase you can see in a photograph, and we found the identical pillow. And I just love the idea that John and Yoko slept on a Peanuts pillowcase, which I think is a beautiful little detail.
And shall I pick up about the phone calls? So as you can see from the film, it was a time of kind of real political machinations going on. Everything was so intense. And John being in New York, John and Yoko was under a huge amount of scrutiny. And those phone calls were actually recorded by John and Yoko. They are from the family estate. They've never been heard before. They were interested about who might be watching them, listening to them, and so they started to record some of their own. And it was part of it, and it's testament, I think, to the film that Kevin's created, that the estate felt confident to allow these. I don't think anyone knew what was on them. They've never been heard, and I don't know about you, but I get goosebumps listening to them, because that's the important things, the everyday things, the funny things. You can just get a real sense. I felt like I was with them.
This question over here.
Okay, you listen the same. My first question is about the actuality of this document. Because if we think nowadays, we still have, unfortunately, many conflicts. Do you think John Lennon and Yoko Ono will have to do something, knowing by the video you have seen? And which one is your favorite song of this concert? To all of you.
If I understood correctly, you were asking
Whether they,
how would he respond today?
yeah, if they would get involved today.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that was so revealing, so I worked on this film for 18 months with Sam Rice-Edwards, who's my editor and co-director, who's sitting at the back there. And when we started to watch for months and months, just watching different material from this period and trying to figure out what was worth putting in, what wasn't worth putting. And we began to get this strange feeling that nothing has changed, that 50 years on, the same things are being talked about, the same subjects about race, about the environment, about populist politics, attempted assassinations, student protests, anti-war demonstrations. It's like the same, and which is a kind of depressing thing in some ways, that maybe we haven't moved on that much. We think that we're kind of special in dealing with these things for the first time, but we're not. And I think that John and Yoko, if they were around now, they would be behaving in the same way, and they would be supporting the political causes and trying to figure out what's the right way to help change the world. And I think that's what you see in the film, is them struggling to figure out, how do you lead a good life? You've left the Beatles, the biggest band in the world. What do you do next? Who are you? What should you become? And you're catching them at this transitional moment, which I think is very, very interesting, and why they're very vulnerable. They're not quite sure who they are, what they should be reporting. Should they be political? Should they not be political?
And the film has an interesting arc in terms of a degree of disillusionment towards the end, about how to use your fame and visibility to engage politically. So the thinking gets very sophisticated on John's part, particularly. Yeah. I
think it's very interesting that he seems to go on a political journey that maybe a lot of us can recognize, which is from thinking idealistically, I'm going to tear down the system and build something new, and it's, we need to get rid of these rotten politicians, and then a realization, it's quite hard to change things, and maybe destruction actually isn't a good thing. So then you start to think, maybe I can just do something in my own small way. I can help a few people make their lives better, whether it be, you're putting money into a school, or you're raising money for cancer research, or in their case, raising money for these disabled children. So I think that's a kind of interesting transition in political thinking.
I think she's also asked you about your favorite song of the concert, each of you.
My favorite song is probably Come Together, actually, because I just think it's it's the only Beatles song in there, and the way John performs it, you feel like, God, why didn't you do more performances? Why didn't you do this live? You're so good. You know, it's so incredibly casual and yet focused, and yeah, it's an amazing song. It's also the first sort of big song in the film, so I think it lifts you up and makes you excited to be in the film.
My favourite is Age 39. I just think, as a woman, and I think, that's sadly, 39 was some years ago, but, it's such a pivotal age, and I think just seeing, hearing from Yoko, and so that for me was particularly poignant, I don't think. And if I may just refer back to the, the gentleman's first question there about what did you take away from there? Actually, for me, it was about Yoko, actually, as much as it was about John. I feel like this film has given Yoko the opportunity, for us to see Yoko sort of equal to John, and maybe that's why Age 39 resonated so much to me.
Very briefly, for me, Mother, I think John's performance of Mother is so deeply moving. And I think the way that in the film we hear him, as a man in 1972, being able to talk about his emotions and the challenges that he had internally and his background, and yet come through it. And I think you see that in the song. And each time I hear that, I think it's an extraordinary performance.
There's a question at the very back.
Hey. Hi, my name is Carla Aguilar Lopez for Film Pilicos in Spain. My question is for Mr. McDonnell. You have done movies about other great music legends. What is your relationship to music, and why have you chosen this particular artist, and now John Lennon and Yoko Ono? Thank you.
Well, I love music, obviously, but I've made 2 other music documentaries, or 3 other actually. I made one a long time ago, which I don't talk about Mick Jagger. But I've made 2 music documentaries other than this one since. And interestingly, I was only thinking about this yesterday, that the one of them is about Bob Marley. It made it like 10 years ago. And Marley and Lennon I fell in love with at the same time in 1980, 81, when they both died within a year of each other. So I'm thinking I must be emotionally frozen, because this is the moment that I'm obviously going back to when I was 13 or 14. And then I made one about Whitney Houston, which is a totally different thing. It's a kind of psychological detective story, trying to figure out who she is. I'm not the biggest Whitney Houston fan, but I am the biggest Bob Marley and John Lennon fan. So it's a different kind of feeling. With her, it was more about trying to understand the mystery of how this beautiful person destroyed themselves.
One of the fascinating things, at least for me, that also adds to the film, beside the Yoko Ono and John Lennon, is their relationship with New York. And now New York energizes them and opens them, and simply, there is that whole passage where John, talks about how his life is simpler and doesn't even have, need to get out of bed, and it's one room. So can you talk a little bit about how you think that just that move, which was done, to look for a daughter, but then it had a major impact on the way they thinking and the way they were living and presenting themselves?
I think that they moved to New York for a couple of different reasons. I think the first impulse was, we need to go and find our daughter, our missing daughter. But I think there was also a running away from England, running away from all the bad publicity that Yoko was getting, all the negativity about her, which frankly, some of which feels a bit racist. And to go to a place that was more accepting and open, and to live this simple life. John talks about what I think it's a Yoko phrase, the 2 tatami life, which is like a Japanese expression, I think. I don't know whether it's Zen Buddhist or where it comes from, but it's that you shouldn't have, it represents just take what you need and no more. Live a simple life. And so this is why they move into this very simple, modest apartment. And John talks in the film about how, you know, he's a working class boy made good. He had Rolls Royces, he had a big country estate and house, and he's given all of that up to live this very simple, ordinary life where they were living amongst artists, but also the West Village at that time was still the meatpacking district, and there was, you know, lorries coming and going, and it was a very working class kind of neighborhood. So they were living, they'd chosen to have this modest life. I can't think of another rock star who's done that, actually. Maybe only the one other one is Paul McCartney, who chose to go to his cottage, his farm in Scotland, in the Mull of Kintyre. So it's interesting there. But I think another way of looking at the film is as this is the sort of working out of the post-Beatles trauma. You know, when you've been one of the most famous people in the world, what happens next? And I think you can see the whole film through that lens.
In the film, John talks about watching TV a lot, and you know, and this seems, I think I understand he was also a big TV man in the UK, and you've used his relationship with TV to create a structure for the film that is very provocative. So can you talk a little bit about the use of television footage and news footage and pop culture thing, and how you waved it into the into their own story, because it just brings the documentary to a bigger level. It makes a statement on the artist and the time.
Well, I think I can talk about myself as well in this, because I remember going to America for the first time in 1986 or something and staying in a motel, and coming from Britain where we still had 4 television channels and they ended at midnight and they played the national anthem and we all had to go to bed. And you go to America and you've got 195 channels and it's 24 hours and it's all the craziness of America is there. And sitting in a motel room in the middle of the night when you wake up jet lagged, looking through all of that, anyone who's old enough who went to America at that time will remember this feeling. And you're all much younger, obviously. But I think John must have had some of that, both the excitement of seeing all this plethora of material available on television, but also the kind of way that you feel like you're looking inside all the dark crevices of this country. And there's something about going from an advertisement for women's tights to a shot of the Vietnam War and a soldier being killed. The contrast of that seems like it shouldn't work, but actually it does, because it represents what culture was like at that time. People weren't just worrying about deaths in Vietnam, they were also thinking, what am I going to put on my legs? And so Sam and I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out what is the balance of these different elements, how much sitcom, how much news footage, how much, to get this feeling that everything is contributing to your collage picture, your collage understanding of the times and of the politics of the times.
And how hard? Oh, sorry, didn't.
Well, I think just listening to Kevin talk about that takes me right back to the very early days of this film. And as I said, you know, finding the right director with the right vision. And I remember a conversation that Peter and I had, and Ken was describing this approach about the fact that if you just landed from Mars and you were just seeing the world through television, that's how we're going to tell this film, which was either pure genius or pure insanity. And just being able to weave that all together was just absolutely extraordinary, because, as you say, it's this most dramatic collage that brings you along. It doesn't hold your hand so tight every step of the way that you can't breathe in this film. But I think just I remember that heart-stopping moment of kind of going, are we doing this? Yes, okay, we're doing this. This is the way we're going to do it. And you know, I couldn't be prouder of the way it's come out.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about how much, what was the archival, because it appears, I mean, it's immense.
It's a lot. Maybe Peter can talk about that. He had to deal with a lot of trouble.
As producer, our production office was just down the corridor from Sam and Kevin in the edit suite, and it was quite nerve-wracking. The edit suite door seemed to be shut for many, many weeks, and we were so obviously an amazing treasure trove of archive came in from the Lennon estate themselves. a lot of it was just material about the Lennons that they had access to. We had a researcher in New York finding material, but we didn't just want to go to the traditional big houses where you find material. So finally we worked with a brilliant archive team called, shout out for Shanaki, who found a lot of this extraordinary material of college football and all of these different bits and pieces. And then I have to say that Sam and Kevin did also do a little bit of trawling around on YouTube and finding us fantastic snippets and say, find who owns this. So that sometimes was the challenge, but you know, that's also the fun of these films, is really digging around and finding the Methodist College of Houston who owns a piece of footage that they've never licensed to anybody before.
You have a question there.
Thank you for giving me the chance again. Was it maybe the film an intention to maybe recover some kind of dignity to Yoko, because she was really demonized and she's still demonized. Maybe this is a way to see a very special side from Yoko, which is a great artist. She's a great artist. And if John was a great man, he only could have such a great woman like Yoko, but she was still demonized, really. Was it an intention maybe to give her back some dignity? And my second question, when are you going to release the film? I'm an old generation, and I still have my collection from DVDs at home. Really, not the platforms. I have to see my films at home, because this is a film we have to see once again and once again, and to recover that a great humanist existed in this world.
Thank you.
It's an example.
Well, the film, we don't know yet. We haven't got a release strategy. We're looking to sell the film. So we're hoping in the next few weeks we'll do that. And yes, very much I wanted to do something new about John Lennon and about the Beatles. And one of the things I heard early on was about Kyoko and about this story of the missing daughter. And this, I think, gave us access to a way of looking at Yoko as a mother and as a much more human and vulnerable person, I think, as Alice said. So by the end, we actually come round to really her perspective at the end of the film. It's about how she has experienced being with this monument, married to this monument, as she puts it, how difficult it was as a woman, the way she was treated, not just by the Beatles, but I think by society at large, as somebody who destroyed this great thing, the Beatles, as someone who wasn't worthy of being with John. So I don't think it wasn't like we pitched to the Lennon family, we want to do a revisionist history of Yoko. It's just that when you have somebody in history who has been seen always from one perspective, you start to think, is that really the only way they can be seen? Is that really the truth of who they are? So I hope that you come out of the film feeling great sympathy for her, and also fascination that John joins her on this feminist journey. I love the fact that it ends with him confronting his own demons in some ways and trying to change, trying to become a better person, and going to the first ever international feminist conference and being the only man in the room, and they're voting to send John Lennon out. The women are voting to send him out of the room. And I just think that shows something so much, not just about Yoko and how powerful she was as a thinker and as an artist, but also about John's open-mindedness and his willingness to go to places that other rock stars, other celebrities would not go.
As you said before, some of the themes, that we see through the footage and the events that they went through at the time are the same things that we are experiencing now. So I'm wondering, when you were editing, when we saw the film, we didn't have a presidential attempted assassination. We didn't have a black presidential candidate, but these things happen. But as you were editing, did you feel this sort of synchronicity with the present?
Absolutely. That was the thing that was so striking. And it really wasn't as though we set out looking for that. It just sort of presented itself, the world is somehow echoing now what was happening then, or maybe you could choose any period in history and you would have this, you know, in the last 60 years when there's archive footage, you would have the same thing. I don't know. As I say, I found that both fascinating but also slightly depressing. It's kind of like, oh, we haven't dealt with these things. We haven't got moved beyond them. And we congratulate ourselves that we're so progressive, or so we're, you know, dealing with issues that nobody else has. But there's nothing new in the world.
And with this, we have to close. They call me for time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for bringing us.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Buongiorno.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to our press conference of Babygirl, which is in competition. Before we start, I'm going to introduce our guest from the right out there. It's Sophie Wilde, Harris Dickinson,
Shall I open it for you, Dave?
Antonio Banderas, the film's writer-director Halina Rain, and Nicole Kidman. Okay. Let's try there.
Hey, sir. Hello, Ms. Kidman. To quote the immortal musical group Salt and Pepper, let's talk about sex. And I think as a society, we are conditioned with a language, if I'm hungry, what I want to ask for, and I'm allowed to have more. But when it comes to sex, somehow or another, we're not given the language skills for that, or we're not told that's okay. So for Nicole and for Harris, because of the sequences that your characters go through, what kind of conversations did you have, and what do you hope audiences discuss about what is allowed or what our desires should be able to allow us to do?
Harris?
Okay.
Well, that's a lot of questions in there. Yeah. I think this film is obviously, yes, it's about sex. It's about desire. It's about your inner thoughts. It's about secrets. It's about marriage. It's about truth, power, consent. So language for sex, it's so complicated, that answer, because this is one woman's story, and this is, I hope, a very liberating story. It's told by a woman through her gaze, which is what Helena's script, she wrote it, she directs it, and that's, to me, what made it so unique, was that suddenly I was going to be in the hands of a woman with this material, and it was very, very deep to be able to share those things, and very freeing. But she speaks beautifully about it, so I'd like to give her the mic just as the director to start, because I don't want to dominate this.
Do you want me to answer the question?
Just talk.
Just randomly talk.
You have a voice, and you've been given it. Let's go. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer your question because it was directed to my wonderful actors. But I will say this, it's been an honor to work with them, but it's also I'm very delighted to be able to make a film about female desire, but it's also a film about a woman in an existential crisis, and it has many layers. And I'm very excited to talk about it today, and very grateful to do it here in Venice.
And I would like to put the film in context a little bit. When I saw it for the selection, it hit me like, it brought me back to those 90s, erotic thrillers, and I was just like so happy to see how you have upped the game. Is very interesting. The regional writing there. You work with Paul Verhoeven, so I'm sure some of it, some of that interest. Can you talk a little bit about that referencing?
Yeah, I worked with Paul Verhoeven. We were here actually at the Venice Film Festival with Black Book in 2006, and I'm a big fan of his work. And I wanted to do something in that space, but very much like Nicole said, from a female gaze. That doesn't mean that the film is not also about masculinity. It deals with femininity, masculinity, power, control, sexuality, and all those different things. And I think at the core of it, for me, it is about the question, can I love myself in all my different layers? And I hope it will function as a tribute to self-love and liberation.
I think we have one here. No, you have the mic right there.
Oh, good, thanks. For Nicole, I wonder if you see this as sort of part two to what was a terrific career high point with Big Little Lies in that abusive relationship, if this is, a more positive version of an S&M relationship.
It's a version. So I don't think there's a judgment attached to it. That's for each person that sees the film to interpret. Their interpretation of it will be wildly different. I'm sure if we polled everyone in this room, they would have a completely different reaction to Romy and the way she behaves. My connection to it is that I want to examine human beings. I want to examine women on screen. I want to examine what it means to be human, and in all the facets of that and the labyrinth of that. So Big Little Lies is actually very different, but this is definitely leaves me exposed and vulnerable and frightened and all of those things when it's given to the world. But making it with these people here, it was delicate and intimate and very, very deep. Right now, we're all a bit nervous. So I was like, hope my hands aren't shaking. But at the same time, really proud to still be invited to a festival like this and to be forging ahead with cinema, with films that are still being made, and particularly with women at the helm. You know, it's part of, I said it, I can't remember how long ago at Cannes at a press conference. I went, I'm going to put my weight behind a lot of women now in terms of directors to try and change the ratio, and this is all part of it, you know. How many women are in the festival?
Across the session, I don't know, but several. It's increased.
And in competition?
Yes, in competition, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least. Yeah.
So we're changing it.
So it seems before I go back to you, it seems that it's time to give the word to Antonio and Harris, because we've been talking a lot about women and women at the helm and women in power, and I think that the balance of this film is really and Sophie as well, as a generation, you know, she represents a new generation. It's really in the balance between the you guys all work in the different role and opposite gender.
I don't know if there is a question specifically about that you said. Sorry, here you go. What I remember is that I used to come to this type of festivals in Venice, Berlin, or Cannes, with movies that actually in our days it would be impossible to do. Movies that would be very highly criticized, or that it would just jump in the territory of the politically incorrect. And we were kind of living in a world in which the politically incorrect established kind of a censorship, self-censorship with artists. And I think when I read the script that Helena gave me, I found a way just to say, oh my God, there is somebody that is just thinking out of the box. That he got actually, you know, the strength and the courageous mind to just put on the screen things that we all think we are, in a way, you know, we are prisoners of our own instincts. Yes, we are animals, you know, and there is something about nature there is nothing democratic about nature. None of which are here. We didn't ask to be born. We didn't ask to be humans or animals or a plant or whatever, you know. We are, you know, attached to what we are. And this is a woman that actually talks about that, and it talks with an incredible freedom. And I was so proud to be part of something like that in our days in which we are all put in boxes, and movements and art should be out of that. So that is the reason that I just jumped into this project, and it made me so proud to be part of it.
We were so lucky to have both of them, because it was the four of us together on a journey, and it was a really, really intimate. And then Sophie comes along and shakes the whole thing up, which was great, because we had this sort of Antonio and I as our generation, and then Harris and Sophie coming, and the two generations colliding, which is really interesting too.
Because for us, the story is also very much about two generations. Apart from the fact that it's about sexuality, it's very much about how different generations view these topics in a different way and how we can learn from each other.
Yeah, I think Harris and Sophie, you should chime in. You represent a different generation in the film. You're also not in power. The film is also a film about power.
No, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think from the minute I started, and Sophie and I spoke about this as well, is that particularly with Samuel, is that he represents within the film such a specificity to like the confusion within a young man of now, separate from the journey with Romy. I think there is, in general, a confusion about how to conduct yourself and how to conduct yourself within sex as well, and the conversation around that and what that means. And I think from the get-go, just going back to Scott's question as well, is that Helena was always ready to dissect and challenge that and challenge the nuance of the behavior. And so I think that opened up a whole new world of the film for me and really made me excited by it, the role and to do it with these guys, and such an honor to be able to work alongside such legends. And then, of course, Sophie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's sort of interesting. I feel like Esme would love this film, as a young woman who's so keen on progression. And I think this film really explores the sort of boundaries and expanses of what it means to be a woman. And so I think it's very sort of relevant. And Esme is all about relevancy and progression. So.
I think we have a question.
I love how Sophie, at the end of the movie, we really try to give Sophie almost the most truthful words. I don't know if everybody has seen the movie, and I love how she delivers them and how we, as maybe a little older generation, can learn from that and be inspired by that.
Yeah. I think we have a question there and then here. Right him. Yeah. No, he's right there. He's behind, before.
Hello, Peter Paul Hood, Interfilm Germany. I was thinking about what you mentioned, the thrillers, erotic thrillers of the 1980s. And in the end, always the women were being punished, like
Yes.
Fatal Attraction.
Yes.
And one is expecting something like that, but you don't do it.
No.
And that I found very interesting. Can you talk about that? Why she doesn't have to be punished?
Because thank you. Why does she not have to be punished this time? Because I think we all, men, women, giraffes, whatever, all beings have, different sides within themselves, and we all have a beast living inside of ourselves. For women, we have not gotten a lot of space yet to explore this behavior. Not only how strong we are, but also how weak we sometimes are. And so my personal belief, I was raised by my parents in a way that I don't believe in good and evil. I think we are all both. And we need to keep shining a light on that, because the moment we suppress it, that's when it becomes dangerous. So that's why I don't want any of my characters to be punished. I just want them to be. And I think that's when we can really connect to them and feel less alone.
There's one here.
Hello, Helen Barlow from Australia. Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Hi. Sophie, a lot of people don't realise that you're Australian, and I'm telling them how you just won an award, darling. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For Boy Swallows Universe, which is one of Netflix's big shows, and talk to me. I mean, you really are on your way. Your character says in the movie that you look up to Nicole's character. Was that a case in real life? And Nicole, what was it like to work with Sophie? Did you have any part in the casting, or perhaps the director could comment on the casting? Thank you very much.
I mean, I feel like I've very much grown up with Nicole. Like, Moulin Rouge is one of my favourite films. Didn't tell you that. But yeah, I mean, it's such an honour to work with someone who I admire so much and who's just like a master of their craft. So it really feels like such a privilege.
Yeah, we actually had a great time, because we could also talk about history of just the industry, and she went to NIDA, and we talked about growing up in Australia, what that means, family, and so separate to everything, we were able to just bond that way. And I remember when I saw that she won Best Actress, I texted her going, oh my God! So it's beautiful to see these young people, young Australians coming up and taking the big bite out of the world that they deserve. Sophie, watch out, everyone.
There's a question down there. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. Maria Guerra, Quinótico, Spain. I'm here. Well, congratulations, and thank you all for this very disturbing movie. I wanted to ask you, Nicole, well, to thank you, because women my generation grew up watching your beauty. And I remember Emma Thompson said in a Berlin festival that women our generation were taught to hate our bodies. And I think for my generation, for us, our generation, is very important the way your body is seen, filmed in this movie. And I was wondering, when along your way did you decide that your body was this, I mean, somehow a weapon, or, I mean, it's part of the battlefield, of the feminist battlefield?
I mean, the thing is, I approach everything artistically, so I don't think of the minutiae. I just go, how do I give over to this particular character at this time fully, without censoring my director, and that's why it is important to feel safe with them, because I will just complete abandon to the story, to the nature of the character that I'm playing. So I don't think about bodies per se. I just think about, how do we tell the story, and what is your vision for it, and how do I help you, and how do we get there? And then we have big conversations, obviously, about the psychology of the character, all of those things. But what I'm bringing is just myself with openness and availability. And I've always done that with directors, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I don't know any other way. I couldn't go into the environment protecting myself and being worried. I have to just go, okay, what do you want to do here?
But I do think you brought up something very important, and that is women's relationships with their bodies. And that is exactly why I wanted to make this movie, the female orgasm, the huge orgasm gap. That still exists, people. Take note, men. So that's part of also the joy of this movie. Not you, Harris. But
what did you say, Harris?
That everyone deserves a good orgasm. Sorry, Helena, please.
No, I was done, but thank you for that question.
The gentleman here. Yeah, him.
Thank you.
Sorry, good morning, everyone. This is Xinxu from iPhone.com from China. And my question will go to Nicole Kidman. I mean, in your opinion, from your perspective, how do you view the role struggling with her expressing of her own sexual desire in this film? And because previously we saw so many actresses or female roles who have been exploited their own opportunities to express their own sexual desire in previous films. So how do you think about this and her decision in this film? Thanks.
In terms of
her character? Struggling for self-expression, sexual self-expression, as usually in films they're frustrated.
Or there's exploitation.
Yeah, there's exploitation of.
I think that's what made it so compelling, was being in the hands of Helena, because I knew she wasn't going to exploit me. I mean, however anyone interprets that, I didn't feel exploited. I felt very much a part of it. It's the story that I wanted to be a part of, that I wanted to tell, and every part of me was committed to that. So for me, that wasn't at all exploitive. There was enormous care taken by all of us. We were all very, very gentle with each other and helped each other. Harris, Antonio, Sophie wasn't in the bed with us, but but in terms of it felt very authentic, protected, and at the same time real.
Speaking of real, I have a follow-up question. I think one of the brilliant piece of casting was Antonio in the part of the husband that is not satisfying sexually his wife. I mean, he's known for roles that are very different, and I think.
It seems that at the end of the movie that problem is fixed.
Yes, it is. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Maybe.
But Helena, let me please tell me what went into the casting, and Antonio, about your performance, which is wonderfully generous and it's very subtle and smart.
Yeah, I mean, he's of course a total legend and an idol for me. But it was incredibly important that apart from his talent as an actor, that we cast this role, Jacob, her husband, as someone who is very, very attractive, very masculine, so that it would not be about that at all. It is her existential crisis. If she would, before the movie, have sat him down and said, hey, listen, we need to talk, this whole movie wouldn't have, taken place. So in that sense, it's also a cautionary tale of like what happens when you suppress your own desires.
And if they'd had the discussion earlier in their marriage. So that's why this is all it is. It's a crisis. It's a crisis.
Yeah.
Following it through. But I do think also, the idea of Antonio going, I'm here, I'm yours. And so Willing says so much about his spirit and his...
That he wanted to support us in that way. It was incredible. The first conversation we had, I was just blown away by how he understood the script, not only his storyline or his part, but also what Romy is going through and everything you had to say about it. And so I felt completely safe with him to do this story, and it's incredibly important, the casting, and A24 of course also plays a part in that, where they have these kind of ideas, and we are very happy, super, super happy.
I think the key is what you just said about being safe. It's very important. When you do a movie like this, you have to be in a union with the person that you're working with. You have to give yourself, and when I say yourself, I'm talking about both, permission. We were very careful in those aspects of the movie, and we knew that at some point we have to go very far away. In the case of Harrison and Nicole was different. It was harder, right, from a point of view. But the people have to think that those scenes are very delicate, but they have the rhythm, they have depth, they have complexity. You are working in an environment that is got a certain tension. So it's very important that all of those pieces are together with kindness and feeling that you are in a safe space. That is coming always from the direction, and she did a great job with us, to tell you the truth.
And the cinematographer, which you should...
The people who are with us all the time,
Because...
The Dutch Jasper Wolf. He is our cinematographer, and he was also incredibly important. He's a genius in working with actors and making them all feel safe, and also how he visually approached this movie. I did Instinct with him, Bodies with him, and now this, and it is a wonderful collaboration. I think collaboration is the key word to this whole project for all of us sitting here. I really feel like it was almost like in the theater, we were all together and collaborating on it constantly.
One more there.
Ben Dalton from Screen International. Congratulations to you all on the film. This is a question for Nicole and Harris. Can you tell us about the first time you met and how long it took to get to a point where you could do those very intense sex scenes?
Well, we were in New York in a little rehearsal space. We had not a lot of time to make the film, so that's why we needed to rehearse. And there's a lot of text. I mean, there's it twists and it winds. And so we sat in a room for 6 hours with Elena and we just talked. Mm-hmm. Oh no, we met before that though.
You met on Zoom.
Even before that.
We met before, like, at some event, but then we met on Zoom, which is always not the...
We can't remember when we met.
Yeah.
No. But in terms of the actual work, we sat and we went through things, and we just shared stories, though. Primarily, a lot of it was just talking about ourselves, which is a really great way for actors to come together, because you share things, and then gently, slowly, you start to feel. But because she's an actress, Helena is an actress herself, so she'd be throwing herself around the room in the rehearsal space, playing all the roles. And that was fascinating because I'd never experienced that before. Have you experienced that before?
No.
She can play every role in the film.
Yeah.
And very, very well. So that is going to be the sequel.
Yeah. Helena, multi-role. We also had a really amazing intimacy coordinator called Lizzie, who was like quite important for the film, and just like broke the unnecessary barrier in the conversation around what you have to do, because it ultimately is choreography. You know, when you get into the like nitty-gritty of those kinds of scenes, you have to be very precarious with it, and she's very good at just getting straight into it on a very pragmatic basis, I think, right? And that helped me, because obviously it's always nerve-wracking, you know, constructing a scene anyway, so then you add something intimate to it and it's very vulnerable, you know?
But there was still a flow to it, which allowed space to move and change and work. It wasn't confined.
No.
And that's what I love to work that way. So that's where you say, well, we've got to have someone at the helm who is watching out and going, oh, here, and was able to sort of, but with that, it's also, because it's a sacred place, the whatever you're doing, whether it's intimate, really, but everything is intimate emotionally as well. So you've got to have that, and I'm a huge believer still in the sacredness of the set or the actor's space, and it never being violated. Because it's ours, it's the bubble, and then there's the world outside.
I'm sorry, but they told me we ran out of time, and so I have to finish here. I want to thank our guest, and thank you for the film.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. That was quick.
A little over half an hour. They called.
Buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di TROIS. Vi presento subito gli ospiti al tavolo, che sono il produttore Frédéric Niedermayer, le tre fantastiche interpreti Sara Forestier, India Aer e Camille Cotin, e il regista Emmanuel Mouret. Allora, attendo le vostre domande. Vorrei cominciare con una domanda per il regista, al quale vorrei chiedere se possiamo definire questo film una commedia che ruota intorno a una tragedia, e come ha ottenuto, sia in fase di scrittura che di riprese, questa perfetta armonia tra diversi generi, di diversi stili, diversi toni, suggeriti dagli stessi personaggi.
Votre question contient un peu la réponse, parce que c'était en fait un peu l'enjeu du film que de mêler peut-être des lignes parfois dramatiques et des lignes plus légères. Et donc l'organisation, on va dire, dramaturgique du film s'est avérée un peu une organisation presque musicale. Et même thématiquement, c'est une série de contrepoints, voilà, qui jouaient.
Nel film c'è un elemento, ci sono più elementi fantastici. Mi riferisco alla presenza di questo fantasma che è una sorta di narratore onnisciente, ma penso anche al sogno di Alice che in qualche modo si realizza. Ecco, che importanza hanno per lei, che importanza ha l'elemento fantastico in questo film e che cosa le ha permesso di esplorare, di raccontare?
C'est surtout ce que le cinéma permet, et cet élément de fantaisie que permet le cinéma a, on va dire, pour moi, résonne avec quelque chose de véritablement concret. Je pense que l'intimité, notre propre intimité, est faite aussi de toute cette fantaisie. Et que ce soit le monde des rêves et des fantômes font partie de nos projections courantes et alimentent et nos idées et nos sentiments.
Mm-hmm. Ci sono già delle domande? Sì, una domanda lì.
Bonjour, une petite question pour Emmanuel Mouret. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire dans quelle mesure vous êtes servi de la nature de vos actrices? Et je poserai la question dans l'autre sens aux actrices. Dans quelle mesure vous êtes sentie libre de faire exprimer votre nature dans votre interprétation?
Alors, bien évidemment que moi j'aime bien. Enfin, toutes les comédiennes ici présentes ont été, oui, choisies pour ce qu'elles sont, et enfin, pour moi, ça va de soi. Enfin, il y avait quelque chose qui était de composer. Enfin, puisque le film tourne autour comme je disais, un peu presque de trois lignes mélodiques qui sont incarnées par les personnages féminins. Et évidemment, tout résonne par une certaine forme de contraste, de contrepoint, de tonalité que chacune des comédiennes apporte, parce que j'ai pas eu... Enfin, ça a été très simple. Ce sont elles qui l'ont apporté. Alors, je ne sais pas ce qui est de leur véritable... Je ne sais pas ce qui est de l'ordre de la vérité, de la composition. Ça a été leur travail d'actrice d'amener quelque chose qu'elles ont elles-mêmes composé. Donc après, à savoir la part de nature, de naturel, c'est toujours complexe.
La domanda era anche per le attrici, quindi ecco, come avete affrontato questi personaggi, come li avete costruiti insieme a Emmanuel?
Bonjour tout le monde. Alors concernant la nature, moi j'ai plutôt l'impression que déjà les personnages dessinent beaucoup les contours au scénario et que la grande partie du travail est là, Donc je sais pas trop, non, la question de nature, j'ai pas trop l'impression que ça me parle pas, moi personnellement. J'ai pas l'impression que ce soit ça qui joue. J'ai l'impression que, évidemment, le choix du casting, c'est le metteur en scène, La question de la nature, c'est lui. Parce que ce qui fonctionne vraiment dans les films, c'est une forme de contraste, entre les acteurs. Et puis après, nous, je pense que c'est toujours de la composition. Enfin, moi, j'ai jamais eu l'impression d'être naturelle dans un film, Voilà.
Merci. Comme le disait Emmanuel, qu'il y a quelque chose de très musical aussi, que c'est une écriture très précise, qu'il y a un rythme qui s'impose, et à l'intérieur de ce rythme, je le voyais même en regardant India, Sarah jouer, il y a quelque chose qui n'appartient qu'à elle dans cette façon d'être dans ce rythme, donc de la même façon que deux musiciens interprètent la même partition. Il y a quelque chose qui va s'imprégner et qui leur ressemble, mais dans la musicalité qui n'appartient là qu'à Emmanuel.
Oui, moi j'aime énormément les films d'Emmanuel et je les aime justement parce qu'il y a une écriture qui se déploie différemment dans chaque film, mais qui donne, comme tu dis, la musicalité. Et j'avais très envie, moi, de rentrer, en fait, dans cette musicalité. Et les textes sont très écrits, donc on respecte ça. Mais j'ai quand même, moi, le sentiment pour ce personnage d'avoir quand même été un peu percée à jour sur certaines choses que je gardais assez intimes. Et là, j'ai l'impression que c'est... où il y a je n'ai pas encore vu le film, mais en tout cas, en travaillant, j'avais le sentiment d'être assez proche de mon intimité par moment.
Al produttore vorrei fare questa domanda. Vedendo il film, ho più volte pensato che questo potrebbe essere anche il pilot di una serie TV, perché è come se, come dire, venisse voglia di continuare ad assistere alle storie di queste tre donne così. C'è mai stata questa idea
C'était à moi la question.
Ah d'accord. Pardon, je m'ai entendu, j'avais pas le casque, je suis désolé.
Mais moi je vais répondre très rapidement me concernant. Oula.
Quelle belle voix.
Vous parlez à un producteur qui n'est pas du tout encore tombé dans la série. Donc je suis un peu le dernier des Mohicans de ce point de vue-là. J'ai pas du tout franchi le cap. Mais en effet, Emmanuel va davantage développer puisque forcément il va répondre. Voilà.
Non, moi je n'ai pas réalisé de série. Ce que j'aime au cinéma, et ça ne va pas contre la série, mais ce que j'aime au cinéma, c'est l'idée d'un conte, ou de plusieurs contes, mais en 1h30, 2h, 3h, et cette idée qu'en sortant de la salle, on puisse reprendre l'histoire, ou les histoires développées dans le film, parce qu'on en a ça fait l'effet d'un conte, on en a le souvenir, on peut retracer le chemin. Dans une série, c'est beaucoup plus compliqué, au bout de 12 épisodes, de retracer le chemin du début à la fin. Donc ça, c'est en ça que, pour moi, c'est du cinéma, dans le sens où c'est davantage du conte. Après, j'avais envie d'un film que j'appellerais presque ultra-narratif. Ça veut dire que j'aime beaucoup les histoires, j'aime beaucoup les contes, et c'est vrai que le film est travaillé, écrit, pour qu'à l'intérieur de ce film se développe, on va dire, toute une série de récits. Le film n'est pas composé d'un récit, c'est pour ça d'ailleurs qu'il est très difficile à résumer. Il y a beaucoup de récits dans le film. Et on s'amusait même avec le monteur pour dire que ce film était une série en un seul épisode. Voilà.
Domande? C'è una domanda lì?
Bonjour. C'est un film sur l'amour sous plusieurs formes et notamment des amours éconduits. Mais c'est jamais vraiment triste. Est-ce que ça fait longtemps que vous aviez envie de matérialiser cette histoire, de l'écrire et surtout d'où ça vient?
Bon, c'est très difficile de savoir d'où les idées viennent. Ça veut dire que, comme je le disais, il y a beaucoup de récits. Et en général, ce qui m'intéresse, parfois je pense, on parle beaucoup de la musique depuis tout à l'heure, mais je trouve que le cinéma et le plaisir de cinéma ont parfois beaucoup plus un effet, ressemblent presque plus à de la composition musicale qu'à une thèse sur un sujet. Et d'ailleurs, on se souvient des films qu'on a aimés, et on se souvient d'une atmosphère, d'être pris par le film, même si on ne se souvient plus exactement de quel était le fil de l'histoire et tout ça. Donc, ce qui m'intéresse en écrivant, c'est en effet, évidemment, de partir de situations qui m'intéressent et qui résonnent entre elles. Et donc, c'est vraiment une construction qui marche, comme je disais, en termes de résonance. Alors oui, il peut y avoir un sujet, on peut se dire que c'est l'amour, que c'est le deuil, c'est beaucoup de sujets d'attention morale, et notamment l'honnêteté, puisque, grosso modo, ce sont trois amis qui ont une conception de l'honnêteté différente. Et peut-être que s'il y avait un fil thématique, oui, c'est ces trois amis qui ont des idées de l'amour, parce que l'amour qu'on vit correspond à l'idée que l'on s'en fait. Une vie en couple correspond à l'idée qu'on s'en fait. Et on peut dire c'est trois amis qui ont chacune une idée de l'amour, du couple et de l'honnêteté qui n'est pas la même, et qui traversent, on va dire, des situations différentes. Voilà.
E data la natura degli eventi a cui assistiamo, si ha sempre l'impressione che prima o poi arriverà qualche frattura tra queste tre amiche. Invece questa frattura non arriva. C'è sempre un'armonia costante tra loro anche nei momenti di difficoltà. Non c'è mai del risentimento, non c'è mai del sospetto. Ogni tanto sembra che stia per nascere un sospetto, ma in realtà tutto fluisce molto. Ecco, da dove arriva la scelta di mantenere costante e affettuoso e complice il loro rapporto?
Moi, je pense que c'est lié à ta nature à toi. C'est-à-dire que je pense que vraiment, les gens, vous ne connaissez pas Emmanuel Mouret dans la vie, mais il a quelque chose de merveilleux, en fait. Il y a quelque chose qui fait que la vie est plus douce. Il y a très peu de personnes, je pense, dans la vie qu'on connaît qui peuvent émerveiller le quotidien, mais il y a des gens comme ça. Et ils sont rares, et en fait, Emmanuel est comme ça. Et donc, en fait, je pense que c'est ça, en fait, la chose. Parce qu'il travaille avec ses potes, et il y a quelque chose... Non, mais c'est vrai, il y a quelque chose qui est de l'ordre... Vraiment, ce mot qui peut être parfois mal utilisé, mais le mot merveilleux, c'est vraiment... Il y a quelque chose qui est de l'ordre de ta nature. On regarde comme ça. Non, mais c'est vrai, il y a quelque chose qui je pense, pas t'échappe, mais qui, de toute façon, vient de toi, très personnellement, quoi.
Peut-être, ça, après ça m'échappe. Et pour répondre à la question, oui, c'est vrai qu'il y a quelque chose, il se passe beaucoup de choses dans le film, mais il y a quelque chose en effet qui ne bouge pas, qui est leur amitié. Alors, c'est pareil, on écrit par contraste, et donc il y a des choses qui bougent, qui se transforment, d'autres choses qui restent liées. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas de message derrière ça? C'est plutôt le dessin qui est comme ça.
Juste pour ajouter, ce que j'aime, ce que je voulais préciser dans cette chose de jamais avoir de rancœur, en fait. C'est pour ça qu'il n'y a jamais de rupture entre elles et que même s'il y a des formes, entre guillemets, de trahison, tout est finalement... Oui, pas mesquin, quoi. Et c'est ça que je voulais dire par rapport à toi, quoi. C'est que c'est bizarre, mais les choses sont jamais mesquines, en fait.
Mais c'est pas... ça, c'est une question de cinéma. Je pense qu'au cinéma, il y a des choses qu'on veut mettre en avant, et c'est vrai qu'il y a peut-être des valeurs ou des façons. On fait toujours au cinéma la publicité de façon de se tenir, de se comporter. Voilà, donc... et de même, à la rigueur, qu'un peintre va faire la publicité peut-être de couleurs auxquelles il est sensible, qu'il aime associer et mettre ensemble. Et donc, oui, j'essaie en tout cas d'avoir comme ligne de conduite dans un film de mettre des choses que j'aime et des choses qui me fascinent. Mais la cruauté me fascine parce que le film est aussi très cruel. Donc, c'est pas, voilà, tout n'est pas... Voilà.
Oui, c'est pas commun de se dire elles vont s'adorer alors qu'il y en a une qui couche avec son mari depuis pas mal de temps. Et néanmoins, mais c'est ce qui est intéressant, c'est que c'est des trajets et c'est que finalement, chacune vit à un moment donné quelque chose de totalement différent et ce mensonge ne devient pas, comme tu dis, une source de rupture ou de mesquinerie ou de jugement, alors que on peut questionner l'endroit de l'honnêteté. Je crois qu'à un moment, ça s'appelait une honnête femme, d'ailleurs. Qu'est-ce que c'est que d'être honnête? Pourquoi on ment? Et à quel point, finalement, on peut aimer son ami et coucher avec son mari. Non, c'est quand même assez amoral. Mais c'est ça qui est intéressant, c'est que finalement, c'est comme si les personnages avaient à chacun un trajet de vie et qu'il y avait un endroit où c'était un peu... indépendant d'une forme de morale ou de code de conduite, en fait.
Ben c'est en effet, parce que c'est le lieu où souvent le cinéma, en tout cas, selon moi, me semble intéressant, c'est quand ça devient un peu complexe et qu'on ne peut pas dire c'est bien ou c'est mal. Ça veut dire qu'il y a une question morale. Et je trouve que, voilà, que le cinéma est intéressant quand il pose des questions aussi de cet ordre-là. Voilà. Donc, ce sont des personnages qui essaient de bien faire, mais qui ne font pas forcément bien, mais ils essaient de bien faire. Voilà.
Mais moi, dans la vie, je trouve ça complètement amoral et j'aurais pas dû... C'est bizarre d'ailleurs que j'ai fait ce film. Parce que, non, mais dans la vie, quoi qu'il arrive, je trouve que... Enfin, moi, j'ai pas du tout justement Enfin, je me suis fait avoir par ton côté merveilleux, quoi. Mais en vrai, je pense pas du tout ce qu'il y a dans le film.
En vrai,
non.
Donc en vrai, tu aurais dit non.
J'aurais pas, couché avec le mari de ma copine.
C'è una complessità fortuita, no? Come si dice nel film, che poi è il senso forse del film stesso. Questa parola questa definizione mi aveva molto incuriosito e forse potrebbe definire il film stesso, che è fatto di una complessità fortuita, come la vita.
Je pense que c'est un des grands récits du cinéma qui est... on vit ensemble, on vit avec des personnes, et notamment c'est pour ça que le lieu de l'amour du couple est si intéressant au cinéma, c'est que le couple est déjà une petite société en soi, avec des accords, des arrangements, une attention avec l'autre, et en même temps, on est aussi parfois et souvent seul dans ses désirs. Et la complexité vient à la fois on vit en société, on accepte des usages, des engagements, des lois, des règles, et en même temps, on a des désirs qu'on peut éprouver que pour soi-même, qui nous poussent à quelque part à sortir de nos engagements, à sortir de ce qui était réglé, et voilà. Et c'est le lieu autant, on va dire, des films, on va dire, de couple, d'amour, de sentiments, que des films de gangsters, où les gangsters sont pris, ils ont leurs règles, leur clan, leurs trucs. Et puis, à un moment donné, voilà, il y en a certains qui ont aussi des désirs qui sont autres que celui du clan et tout ça, où il peut y avoir justement une histoire d'amitié, d'amour avec quelqu'un qui est d'un autre clan et tout ça. Et je pense que oui, que le cinéma aborde assez souvent cette question justement de cette complexité-là, et qu'on peut voilà, retrouver voilà, dans différents genres, à différents niveaux. Et c'est ça, en tout cas, qui rend, selon moi, en tout cas, les histoires d'amour sentimental, de désir, si intéressantes. C'est qu'elles nous confrontent chacun entre son désir à soi et ce désir de rester, d'appartenir à un clan, que ce soit son couple ou sa société, ses règles et tout ça.
Et j'ai l'impression que moi, mon personnage, il essaye de comprendre ce qui est acceptable aussi. Et c'est là sa grande difficulté entre ce qu'elle imagine être la bonne chose à faire, mais est-ce que c'est la bonne chose à faire pour elle, ou est-ce que c'est une construction sociétale, sociale. Et c'est pour ça qu'elle a besoin de parler beaucoup avec ses amis. Et c'est ce que je trouvais ça très beau, en fait. C'est aussi de faire une petite enquête, chacune, d'essayer de comprendre comment on peut fonctionner, et de faire ça entre amis. C'était quelque chose qui me plaisait énormément à la lecture du scénario, ça.
Oui, parce que ce qui est intéressant, c'est des personnages qui ont du scrupule. Ça part sur un scrupule de manque d'honnêteté. Et ce que je trouve intéressant, c'est des personnages qui ont des scrupules, parce que il n'y a rien de plus beau que d'avoir des scrupules. Scrupules pour bien faire, scrupules, attention envers l'autre. Et en même temps, ces scrupules, cette attention, nous font souffrir et font souffrir les autres. Il y a, je ne me souviens pas très bien de la phrase, mais qui est très belle, de Freud, qui dit plus quelqu'un veut être vertueux, plus il a de scrupules, plus quelque part il s'accuse de péché et de tort. Et presque aussi, il en cause par ses scrupules. Ça ne veut pas dire que quelqu'un qui n'a pas de scrupules n'en cause pas, mais il y a quelque chose d'assez vertigineux à ça. Voilà. Bref, je ne sais pas si je me fais comprendre.
Et moi, je peux juste rajouter un truc parce qu'en fait, ça revient à l'idée de la rupture. En fait, moi, le sujet du couple m'intéresse absolument pas. Et ce que je trouve fou, c'est que, moi, je trouve que c'est pas tellement l'idée du couple et des relations qui est intéressant dans ton cinéma. On n'a pas vu le film, hein, nous, les actrices, mais c'est que moi, ce que je trouve, c'est vraiment l'idée d'absence de rupture. Et ça, c'est assez fou. Moi, personnellement, j'ai été complètement traumatisée par une histoire d'amour. Et je trouve que souvent, dans les parcours amoureux des gens, il y a un moment donné de rupture. On peut être complètement brisé par une histoire d'amour, et il y a un moment donné où c'est du surplace, quoi. On continue plus de vivre. Et ça n'existe pas dans ton cinéma. J'ai l'impression que c'est ça, en fait, qui est vraiment intéressant. C'est que ce truc qu'en fait, à chaque fois, il n'y a pas ce truc de plomber. Il y a un truc où la vie passe toujours par-dessus. Et pour moi, c'est plus de l'ordre de la bonté que de l'ordre des relations amoureuses. Pour moi, ça tient à ton regard à toi. C'est-à-dire qu'en fait, tu as quelque chose de merveilleux qui fait qu'à chaque fois, quoi qu'il arrive, tu arrives à trouver du beau dans du moche, du beau dans quelque chose qui pourrait plomber des personnes, en fait. Et tu fais que les personnages... moi, je trouve que ton regard sur l'amour, toi, dans la vraie vie, et dans tes histoires d'amour, fait que la vie continue toujours. Alors que dans la vraie vie, il y a plein de gens, c'est une hécatombe. Il y a plein de gens qui sont détruits.
Le personnage qu'interprète Vincent, lui, sa vie ne continue pas. Mais en même temps...
Parce qu'il est mort.
Oui.
Oui, mais c'est pas pareil. Parce que tu continues ailleurs, peut-être. Alors que quand tu es vivant et que tu es mort-vivant parce que tu as été éclaté par l'amour et que tu fais du surplace et que tu arrêtes de vivre, c'est complètement autre chose.
Questa conversazione è meravigliosa, immagino quello che sia successo sul set, cioè immagino le stesse meravigliose discussioni anche sul set, o mi sbaglio?
Non, je pense que... non, parce que Je pense que beaucoup de choses échappent à la discussion. Les comédiens, les comédiennes arrivent avec... C'est ça qui est excitant pour un metteur en scène, c'est que les comédiens et les comédiennes arrivent avec aussi une proposition, avec une idée. Il y a une rencontre avec leur proposition, mais un film se dessine au fur et à mesure. Il n'y a pas un film qu'on a imaginé et ensuite on applique ce qu'on fait. Donc voilà, on a tous fait le film. Il n'y avait pas un film qui existait déjà et qu'on a essayé de reproduire. Non, non, ça s'est fait un peu comme ça, avec ce que chacun a apporté.
C'è una domanda al signore qui davanti.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Per il regista, solo 3 piccole curiosità. Perché Lione viene annunciata all'inizio del film e poi sparisce? Giusto, si vede il museo lì vicino all'anfiteatro romano, si vede uno scorcio, poi non si vede. E sembra quasi un film solo di interni. Perché questa annunciazione della città, che è meravigliosa, ad esempio come ha fatto a resistere a non fotografare il monumento ai fratelli Lumière, che voglio dire per un regista dovrebbe essere sacro. E poi l'ultima curiosità è se lei ha qualche debito di ispirazione o di riconoscenza con film come Le Plaisir di Ophuls o per l'intreccio delle vicende alla ronde di Ophuls. Tutto qui.
Merci de citer Ophuls. Oui, c'est une très belle référence. Et en effet, il y aura toujours une éternelle dette, on va dire, faite à l'égard de ces films que j'aime vraiment beaucoup. Et après, j'ai beaucoup... il y a beaucoup de références. J'ai une culture de cinéma très classique. Et parmi, on va dire, les cinéastes qui se sont en effet beaucoup, on va dire, intéressés dans cette obsession, on va dire, du couple, que ça soit Lubitsch, Billy Wilder, Éric Rohmer, Truffaut, Woody Allen, et beaucoup d'autres. Voilà, donc donc quand je fais des films, très honnêtement, je pense beaucoup en effet aux films que j'ai vus, que j'ai aimés, et je crois que toutes les idées de films viennent des films qu'on a aimés. Et c'est pour ça que le cinéma est une tradition. Voilà, on se nourrit et on retransmet quelque chose avec ce qu'on peut, avec les moyens qu'on a, avec le talent qu'on peut avoir. Mais en tout cas, oui, tout est une dette, en tout cas, à beaucoup de cinéastes.
Lione.
Ah, sur Lyon, si, non, je trouve qu'il y a tout au long du film, il y a peut-être un peu plus d'intérieur que d'extérieur, mais il y a d'autres extérieurs. Et puis, enfin, ce n'était pas non plus l'ambition du film que de faire un guide touristique pour Lyon, mais peut-être, je sais pas, ça me plaisait au début d'inscrire l'idée que le film se passe à Lyon, qu'on voit des décors, et puis ça m'amusait qu'on voit des décors et puis qu'on puisse les retrouver après. Mais c'est une petite idée parmi d'autres. Mais oui, j'aurais pu faire plus, et voilà, mais la prochaine fois, voilà.
Allora, io vi ricordo che il film sarà distribuito in Italia dalla Key-Red e grazie, dobbiamo fermarci qui. Grazie a tutti. Merci beaucoup.
Grazie.
Merci.
Buongiorno, anzi buon pomeriggio ormai direi. Benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di Cloud. Vi presento subito gli ospiti al nostro tavolo, che sono la produttrice Yumi Arakawa e il regista Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Vorrei cominciare dicendo che intanto abbiamo appreso una fantastica notizia, e cioè che il film è stato scelto dal Giappone per rappresentare appunto il Giappone agli Oscar, alla prossima corsa agli Oscar. È la prima volta per lei, se non sbaglio, e ecco, volevamo intanto un commento su questo.
そういうニュースがもうこちらでも流れてるんですね。僕も昨日の夜聞いて、誤解しないでくださいね。これは別にオスカーに選ばれたというんではなくて、オスカーの日本映画の代表として選ばれたんで、これからそのオスカーの選考があって、その後オスカーに選ばれるかどうかはまたこの先に決まるということです。日本の代表に決まったということですね。本当に純粋な娯楽映画を作ろうというところからスタートした作品ですので、まさかそのような大きな、このベネチアもそうなんですけども、そのような大きな名誉みたいなものと縁があるとは思っていなかったので、もう大変驚いています。それと僕の唯一の楽しみは、唯一というか大きな楽しみは、主演の菅田将暉さんがまだ日本以外ではあまり知られていないかもしれませんが、もしオスカーにこの作品が行ったら、アメリカでこの主演の菅田将暉さんのことが大いに知れることになるだろうと想像すると、とてもそれは嬉しいことです。
Yumi.
はい、すいません、失礼しました。昨日突然飛び込んできたニュースで、ベネチア滞在中にとっても素晴らしいニュースをいただきまして、私たちも驚いているんですが、監督がおっしゃったように、日本の中で、作った作品が、海外の方に楽しんでいただけるということで、とても嬉しく思っております。
Allora, se ci sono delle domande, alzate bene la mano. Vorrei cominciare con una domanda per il regista. Nel 2001 il suo film Pulse, che cominciava a esplorare, diciamo, i territori digitali, immaginava una realtà in cui dal web fuoriuscivano degli spiriti ultraterreni. Dopo oltre 20 anni lei torna a esplorare il web, e che cosa è successo nel frattempo?
Sì, そうですね。カイロの頃は本当に20年以上前ですけども、インターネットというものがまだ不気味で、その中に何か邪悪なものが潜んでいるんではないかというフィクションが妄想の中で成立した時代でした。ただそれから20数年経って、今インターネットはごく当たり前の、誰でも使うどの家庭にもある普通のツールになっていると思います。インターネットの中そのものに何か悪があるとか、あるいは善があるとか、そういったものではない、もうごく普通のものであると思います。ただやはり今人間の心の中がどうなっているのかなとそう思いを巡らしますと、そうですね、ちょうど世紀の変わり目でした。回路を作った時は2000年でした。そこから新しい21世紀になって、これは日本の東京で住んでいる実感ですけども、どんどん希望というか未来への展望みたいなものが
どんどん見えなくなり希望が少なくなり、まだ2000年ぐらいまではこの先何かいいことがあるんじゃないか、未来はひょっとすると美しい平和な楽しい世界なのかもしれないと思えたんですけども、今や本当に先が見通せない、未来にはいいことは何一つないかもしれないというような思いが貧しい人もお金持ちの人も年取った人も若い人も全ての人の間に何か積もっていってるような気がします。これは20数年前とだいぶ変わってきましたね。でその人間の心に中にある欲求不満あるいは歪みのようなものがやっぱりインターネットを通して異様に増幅されてで集結してしまう、そういう現象は20数年前は考えられなかったことなんですけど、そういうことは実際日本でも起こっていますし、そういう人間の心の中こそが今やはり問題なんだなと、インターネットはそれを本当に象徴的に表しているんだなというふうに考えています。そういうことがそういう発想がこの映画の原点になっています。
E da dove nasce questa storia? La storia in particolare di questo rivenditore che lucra su queste merci, poi scatenando, diciamo, l'ira e l'odio di tanti consumatori, insomma.
これは僕の知り合いに転売をやってる男がいたっていうのが一番最初のきっかけですね。彼は男なんですけど別に悪いことをしているというわけではなくて、ただこう大きな組織の中で働くということが苦手で、取り立てた何か才能があるわけではなく、もちろんお金があるわけでもない、でもそれでも現代の社会で生きていこうとするときに一つの、生き方だと思いました。犯罪をしているわけではありません。ただ犯罪すれすれのことをやってるんですけども、おそらく、この資本主義の世界でどんな会社も同じようなことをやっているような気がします。ただ組織でやっていると一人一人は守られていて、そんなに罪悪感はないのかもしれませんが、会社や企業がやっていることをたった一人でやるとやはり大きなストレスと、本当に一歩間違うと本当に犯罪になってしまう非常に危険な瀬戸際でやらないと儲からないというですね、そういう非常に、資本主義のもう本当に冷たい現実がその彼の周りにあって非常に興味深い現代的ないかにも現代を象徴する仕事だなと思って、主人公をこの転売屋という設定にいたしました。
Ci sono delle domande? Vorrei sapere da Yumi Arakawa come è stata l'esperienza sul set in questo film e che tipo di conversazione hanno anche avuto sul tema che hanno affrontato, che è un tema rilevante che, come dire, non riguarda solo il Giappone ma ormai riguarda società occidentali sicuramente in tutto il mondo e tutto il mondo.
この作品自体は、2018年頃に、散歩する侵略者という作品、ビフォー・ビバニッシュという作品になりますけれども、そちらが公開された後に監督と、オリジナルの物語を作って りましょうという、次はオリジナルでやりましょうというお話からこの物語を、作り始めました。でその中で監督が先ほどおっしゃってたみたいな、転売というモチーフから、一般の人たちが、最終的には先頭になるという、物語になっていったんですけれども、今日本自体もかなり社会の状況が先ほどのインターネットのお話ですとか、人間関係の、なかなかその難しさというか、そういうところで、ギスギスしているというか、実際日本でも、私たちがその企画を始めた頃には、なかったような、事件だったりとか、突然、人から、襲われるっていう事件が日常的に起こるようになっていったということがあり、そういう世相というか、図らずもそういう世相にこの作品がどんどん近づいていって、監督とお話ししながらですけれども、それを狙って作っていたわけではないとは思うんですが、最終的に今、作る世の中に出ていくタイミングで、とてもこう現代的な、テーマにこの作品が、近づいて、持っているものになったなというのはありますね。
E ho letto che sono stati necessari molti anni per sviluppare questo progetto. Come mai? Quali sono state le difficoltà o forse non, come dire, non si era ancora pronti per affrontare questo tema?
僕ですか。いや、日本でやっぱり今プロデューサーが申し上げましたように、全くオリジナルのストーリーで、しかも一種のジャンル映画ですね、そういうものを成立させるっていうのはそもそも難しいのです。原作があったりするとまた別なんですが、だからそう簡単にお金は集まらないのは最初から分かっていました。それとこれは影響が多少あったんだろうというのは、やはり COVID ですね、いろんな政策が中断してしまって、あるいは延期されてしまったりして、新しい作品を手がけるというのはなかなか後回しになっていったという状況があるでしょう。ただ主演に菅田将暉さんが決定した、菅田将暉さんがこの脚本を読んでやりたいと言ってくれたというのが決まった瞬間からあっという間に実現しました。海外の方はあまりご存じないかもしれませんけど、菅田将暉さん、主演ですね、主演の菅田将暉さんというのは日本で今30歳ぐらいですけども、その年代では人気実力ともにも圧倒的にナンバーワンの、俳優なんです。そういう日本のすごく人気のあるスター俳優が、このどちらかというといい人の役ではない、非常に悪い面も持ったこの主人公の役を、これをやりたいと言ってくれた、このことによってもうあっという間にこの企画が成立していったというのは本当に嬉しいことでした。
E appunto ci parli ancora un po' di questo attore, perché hai pensato che fosse quello giusto per interpretare questo personaggio, come giustamente diceva, molto ambiguo, nel senso che, come dire, diventa quasi un eroe ma non lo è, e come è stato il lavoro tra di voi, anche gestire degli attori così famosi, com'è stato nella sua esperienza?
そうなんですよ。若いのに彼は本当にさまざまな役をこれまで演じていて、すごく善人、いい人の役もやるし、本当の悪人もやるし、あるいは全然主役じゃない、本当ちょっとしか出てこないような役もやるし、もうあらゆることを演じ分けることができる人です。で、今回今おっしゃったように、主人公は曖昧な人にしようと考えていました。曖昧って何かっていうと、僕から言わすと普通の人です。映画の登場人物、主役っていうともう少し分かりやすいある特徴的なキャラクターがあったり、 喜怒哀楽をはっきり表したりする人の方が、特にジャンル映画の場合、都合がいいのは分かっているんですが、今回は普通の人でいきたい。それが僕の一つの希望でしたし、チャレンジでした。で、このいい人か悪い人がどっちなんだろう、あるいは「はい」と言っても半分ぐらいは「いいえ」も含まれてる。分かったと言っても半分は「いや実はよくわからない」も含んでいる、そういう普通の人間が持ち合わせてるその濁った感じ、曖昧な感じをやっぱり菅田将暉ぐらいの非常に高度な演技力があれば、この曖昧さが曖昧さとして本当にそのまま観客に伝わるんじゃないかなと思って、彼以外にないというふうに考えていました。僕は見事にそれに応えてくれたと思います。主人公がただ単に曖昧だというと、下手すると見てる人が何の関心も持てなくなったり、全然魅力を感じなかったりしかねないんですけど、菅田将暉ぐらい強烈な個性と高い演技力を持っていると、曖昧なよくわからない人間であっても彼が一体どうするのか、この先どうしたいのか、おそらく見てる方最後まで彼に関心を持って見ていただけたんではないかと思います。見てお分かりのように、その曖昧な反応しかしてこなかった彼が最後には殺すか殺されるかっていう、もう本当に究極の決断を迫られてしまうっていうのがこの映画の一つの構造になっているわけですね。
Yuri o Yumi, ho letto che lei considera questo film un punto di svolta nella carriera di Kurosawa e volevo sapere se è vera questa cosa che ha detto e perché.
はい。私がそういうことを言うのもおこがましいんですけれども、いろんな長いフィルモグラフィーの中で、監督の長いフィルモグラフィーの中で、それぞれの時代にごとに、V シネマを撮られている時代だったりとか J ホラーを撮られている時代だったりとかっていうので、2010年代っていうのが、原作の物語を職人監督として撮ってらっしゃるという時代があって、でその後に今図らずもこの作品が一番最新の公開作になったんですけれども、もともとのオリジナルセルフリメイクの「蛇の道」という作品でしたりとか、日本で公開されてます「チャイム」というベルリンで公開された作品もございますけれども、そちらの作品群が今ちょうど同じタイミングで世の中に出ていっているということなんですけれども、黒澤監督のもともと何て言うんですかね、監督自身がお好きな世界観でしたりとか得意だと思っていらっしゃるのではないかと思っているそのアクション映画、ガンアクションをこの作品やりましょう、本格的なガンアクションをやりましょうというお話で始めていましたので、そういう何て言うんですかね、監督の原点回帰じゃないですけれども、そういう作品になって、またかといってその集大成という監督よく言われがちなんですけれども、常に新しいことに挑戦し続けている監督だと私は思っていますので、この作品をまたきっかけに、次の黒澤監督の新しいフィルモグラフィーが続いていくということになれば嬉しいなというふうに思っています。
C'è una domanda lì, in fondo.
Hi again, Mr. Kurosawa. Earlier on, I couldn't finish my question, but it's with regards to the relationship between the main character and Akiko. It's the only female character in the film, and she ends up being the perfect caricature of a gold digger. And it prompted the question in my mind about your relationship with, what's happening between a man and a woman. And we could say the story is deprived of erotism. And it's not the first time for you when you were asked to create a story that was erotic and the studios decided it was not erotic enough. So clearly you're not an artist who puts all his energy into that side of a story, which is rare. So that was my question for you, how you depict this story between these two people.
僕、エロティシズムは本当に苦手で、暴力的なことは嫌いではないんで、描くんですけど、エロティックなことは何度か挑戦したんですけど全く下手だなという自覚があって、やめました。苦手なことはもう手を出さないでおこうと。ダメですね。エロティシズムはよくわかりません。ただ今回たった一人の女性が出てくるんですけど、これはズバリ言って、主人公吉の一つの希望の象徴であるというふうに考えております。この主人公はさっき言いましたように本当に曖昧ないい人とも悪い人とも言えないキャラクターなんですが、唯一このアキコという、彼女も何を考えているのかわからない、最終的には裏切る存在なんですけども、彼女に関してだけはなぜか非常に無条件に信じている。彼女を信じているというより彼女と共に過ごす未来を信じている。これはその普通の男である吉井の唯一の絶対的なことといいますか、彼が闇雲に無条件に信じていることとして、この彼女の存在を設定しました。その唯一の希望未来にも最後には裏切られ、彼はようやく号泣するわけですけども、ようやく自分が何をしたか、自分が生きている社会はどんなものであったかというのを、彼女に裏切られかつ彼女が目の前で死んでしまうことによって、彼は全てを理解するというふうに一応物語は作ってあります。で、何を彼は理解したのか、その最後の希望が、淡い希望が崩れ去って何を理解したのかっていうのは一番最後に彼がセリフで言うんですけども、ここは地獄の入り口だ。実はもう随分前から、ひょっとしたらさっき言いました2000年を超えてある時期からとっくにもう地獄は始まっていたのかもしれませんが、一応なんとかそのことに目を向けないようにして彼は生きてきたけども、ついにいやここはもうすでに地獄の入り口だったということに気づく。大げさですけども、その彼をそこに気づかせる最後の崩れ去る希望としてアキコという女性を設定してあります。
So first off, it's an honor to ask you a question. And you made Pulse in 2001, and now it's known as one of the movies that was the most prescient about the negatives on the internet. And I wonder if in the 20 years since, your feelings on the internet has evolved or changed, or if it stayed about the same.
単純に言うとその20数年前カイロにやった頃から比べると僕自身がもうしょっちゅうインターネットを使うようになってしまっているという現実から来ているんだと思うんですけども、さっきも少し申し上げたかもしれませんけど、インターネットそのものに何かいいも悪いもないと思うんですが、やはりインターネットは何かを増幅してでどっか集結させる力があると思います。これはいいように使うと素晴らしいものだと思います。小さな善意が拡大して、集結してもう大きな動きになるということはありえます。ただそれが逆に働くとある種の悪意が小さな悪意が拡大されて集結する、これは本当悲惨なことになるわけですね。だから人間の心の中にある何か、それは善であったり悪であったりいろいろあるわけですけど、それを思わぬ形で増幅して集結するというのがインターネットのというメディアの特徴なんだろうなっていうのは自分が普通に使っているからこそ、だんだん気づいてきたことでした。
Allora, io vorrei ringraziare la produttrice Yumi Arakawa e il regista Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Dobbiamo fermarci qui. Molte grazie. Grazie.
ありがとうございました。